More than half a century later, Lost in Space 1965 remains an icon of imagination and courage. The Robinson family once captivated the entire world, making them believe that family ties could overcome even endless space. But behind the lights are lonely hearts' losses and tragedies that bring tears to the eye. Before we embark on the journey of discovering each star, who among the Robinson crew do you remember the most? Please leave a comment with the name of the character who touched you most, because every one of them carries a very real and very sad story. June Lockhart, as Dr. Maureen Robinson, the resilient mother in solitary space. Born in the heart of bustling New York City on June 25, 1925, June Lockhart seemed destined for a path in the arts. The daughter of two actors, Jean Lockhart and Kathleen Lockhart, she stepped onto the stage early as a young woman. And by 1965, having passed the age of 40, she brought all her experience and warmth into the role of Dr. Maureen Robinson, the devoted mother of the spacefaring family in Lost in Space. Amidst the distant alien landscapes, it was her gentle smile that kept a very human warmth in the series. Success came quickly, but fame was a double-edged sword. When the series concluded, June Lockhart became a television icon, yet also began to face the void left by the glamour. She once said in an interview, "The stage lights are so bright, but when they go out, that darkness is long." After two failed marriages, she lived quietly alone, far from parties and cameras. At an age when many find peace with family, she chose solitude, just like the endless space her character once drifted through. Relatives recounted that she never complained. Every morning she would make a cup of tea, sit by the window, watching the sunlight fall, and whisper, "At least I can still see the sunrise." That optimism earned everyone's respect. To the audience, June Lockhart remains the image of the kind mother who believed that no matter where they were, on Earth or in the cosmos, family was still home. And then on October 23, 2025, she concluded her century-long journey in peaceful sleep, passing away at the age of a full 100 years. Her ashes were interred in Los Angeles, where she lived for half a century. No clamor, no extravagance, just a gentle farewell in everyday life. June Lockhart's net worth was estimated at around $10 million, a small figure compared to the glamour she brought to American television. But what remains is more precious than any material possession, the gentle smile of the mother Maureen Robinson, still sparkling in the memories of generations of viewers, like a tiny star eternally bright in infinite space. Jonathan Harris as Dr. Zachary Smith, the acerbic laughter in cold space. Born in the Bronx in the winter of 1914 to a Russian Jewish immigrant family, Jonathan Harris learned early on how to make others laugh, a skill not just for affection, but for survival. When he took on the role of Dr. Zachary Smith in Lost in Space, he was over 50, and Jonathan understood that this was his last chance to establish his name. Initially, his character was just a minor villain, but Harris himself transformed Smith into the soul of the series, an arrogant, cowardly, yet endearingly witty individual. Every exclamation, every raised eyebrow, every sigh of "oh, the pain" became an irreplaceable trademark. Audiences loved Smith for his pathetic absurdity, but few knew that behind that mask of humor was a tormented soul. Harris once confessed that he feared being forgotten. After the series ended, the shadow of the role was so vast that all subsequent offers revolved around the same type of character, sarcastic, theatrical, and exaggerated. He, the perfectionist artist, longed to be recognized for more serious roles. "Hollywood loves to cage people in a stereotype," he once said, "and I was its happiest victim." After Lost in Space concluded, Harris spent the rest of his life doing voiceover work, teaching, and appearing on small television programs. He maintained his refined demeanor, impeccably tailored suit, and always flat tie, as if preparing to step onto the stage at any moment. But a close friend once revealed he was very lonely. After every recording session, Jonathan often sat alone, talking to no one. Perhaps that's why he loved the role of Smith so much, because only in that fictional world was he able to live truthfully with his own weakness. On November 3, 2002, just 3 days before his 88th birthday, Jonathan Harris passed away in his sleep in Encino, California. His death was as gentle as his departure from the screen. No fanfare, no tears. Just a moment of silence in the hearts of his fans. He left behind his wife and only son, along with a legacy of hundreds of television roles and one immortal character, Dr. Smith, the villain we both hated and loved. Jonathan Harris's net worth upon his death was estimated at around $5 million US, modest compared to the spiritual value he left behind. But perhaps the most precious thing is the laughter of millions of viewers every time they hear the line, "Oh, the pain." An acerbic yet deeply human lament, both Smith's dialogue and the self-reflection of Jonathan Harris himself, the man who spent his life turning pain into laughter. Guy Williams as Professor John Robinson, the lonely hero in a foreign land. On January 14, 1924, in New York, a boy of Italian descent was born named Armando Joseph Catalano, later known to the world as Guy Williams. Fate seemed to have chosen the mantle of a hero for him, an uncommon height, a cinematic face, and a composed presence. Years later, when he entered the set of Lost in Space, he was past 41, bringing the maturity of an experienced man to create Professor John Robinson, the steady father, a calm commander amidst the turbulent cosmos. John Robinson's authority came from his restraint. Minimal commands, a resolute gaze, a hand placed on his child's shoulder just as panic flared. Audiences loved him for the sense of being protected the character provided. But this very perfection became an invisible cage in real life. After the lights dimmed, Guy Williams was typecast into the image of the invulnerable hero. Most scripts that came his way wanted him to repeat the same stance, the same standard smile. He wanted to be weak, wanted a role where he could sigh, even collapse. But Hollywood did not want their hero to cry. In the mid-1980s, he left the U.S. as a way to reduce the noise of the past. Buenos Aires welcomed him with unusual affection. Children called Zorro in the streets. Adults invited him for coffee, asking about his health as if he were family. There, Guy lived simply in a sunny apartment, reading in the morning, playing the guitar in the afternoon, listening to the city breathe at night. For the first time, he was loved not for the television legend, but for the man smiling in front of them. And there, too, he learned to accept if he couldn't change his role on screen, he would change the rhythm of his life off-screen. Despite this, loneliness persisted like a shadow behind him. Friends recounted that he often stood by the window for a long time watching the sun move off the red-tiled roofs, as if waiting for a scene that never came. He did not complain, only remained silent. The silence of someone who understood the price of glamour and the different price of staying after the applause has faded. In the memory of those who met him, Guy was elegant to the last, his shirt neatly ironed, his gestures restrained, his words measured. As if at any moment the director might shout, "Action!" On April 30th, 1989, in Buenos Aires, the quiet story concluded. Guy Williams passed away aged 65. His passing was discovered late, a detail that saddened fans. Their hero was, after all, a human being who could be lonely even in a city that loved him. No one remembers exactly how much wealth he left behind. What people remember is the composed stance of Professor John Robinson beneath the starlit sky. In the old film reels, he still looks straight ahead. And in a very private corner of the universe, Guy Williams perhaps found where he belonged. Dick Tufeld, the voice of the robot and narrator, an unfading echo in the void. There are voices that, when uttered immediately, bring back our entire childhood memory. For millions of viewers, that sound is the warning, "Danger, Will Robinson," echoing through cold space. That voice belonged to Dick Tufeld, a man who never appeared in the frame but gave Lost in Space its soul. He was the voice of the robot, the narrator who opened every episode, the steady heartbeat that kept that entire fictional universe alive. Born in Los Angeles on December 11, 1926, Dick Tufeld quickly found his passion for sound. While his friends dreamed of becoming actors, he chose to sit behind the microphone where only his voice and imagination were his companions. With a deep, resonant voice and dramatic inflections, Tufeld quickly became a familiar announcer for ABC Radio. He was the kind of artist who did not need a face to be remembered. One phrase was enough for people to know instantly who it was. Behind that professionalism was a meticulous person, sometimes overly critical of himself. He would often record the same line dozens of times just to adjust his breath. "I wasn't just reading lines," he once said, "I was narrating the heartbeat of the universe." It was that spirit that made the robot in Lost in Space a character with genuine emotion despite being inanimate metal. People loved the robot for its wit and loyalty, and they loved the voice that breathed soul into it. After Lost in Space ended, Tufeld continued his voiceover work, lending his voice to countless films and programs, but gradually withdrew from the crowds. He rarely gave interviews, living a simple life with his family in California. Friends described him as warm yet reserved, the kind of person who would silence a room when he spoke, then quietly retreat when the party ended. It seems he understood well his job was to make others hear, not to be seen. On January 22, 2012, Dick Tufeld passed away in Studio City, California, aged 85. His ashes were interred near Los Angeles, where he once began his journey with sound waves. His net worth was estimated at around $4 million, a modest figure, but the auditory legacy he left behind is immeasurable. In the final moments of many Lost in Space episodes, his voice still resonated in the dark void, both distant and familiar. Now, when we hear the robot say, "Danger, Will Robinson," it is not just a line. It is the echo of an artist who spent his life telling stories to the world with his very own breath. Sheila Allen, guest star as Aunt Gamma, the gentle presence behind the scenes. Sheila Allen was not a leading star, had no golden statues or dozens of headlines, but every time she appeared, people remembered her. In Lost in Space, she was only a guest, the fleeting role of Aunt Gamma, yet her intelligent gaze and composed demeanor were enough for the audience to recognize there was a layer of subtle artistry hidden within that simplicity. Born on February 2, 1929 in New York, Sheila grew up in a period when women had to fight twice as hard to be recognized in the film industry. She did not follow the visible path of fame, but chose to stand behind the spotlight, working with directors, assisting with production, sometimes merely serving as a consultant backstage. The name Sheila Allen is associated with a style of filmmaking that was meticulous, compassionate, and full of dedication. Therefore, when director Irwin Allen, who later became her husband, invited Sheila to appear in Lost in Space, the audience sensed the quiet respect the entire crew held for her. Sheila's life was not a violent tragedy, but a series of long, low notes. After Irwin Allen's death, she lived quietly, refusing most interview requests. Friends recounted that she often said, "I had a life behind the camera, and there I was happy." Hidden behind her composure was the loneliness of someone who witnessed the entire world of cinema change when films shot on celluloid were gradually forgotten and the people who made them also vanished from public memory. Sheila Allen passed away on November 15, 2013 in California, aged 84. Her ashes were interred next to Irwin Allen, her husband, colleague, and creative soulmate. Her net worth was estimated at around $3 million, largely from royalties for television productions she co-produced in the 1970s-1980s. But the true value Sheila left behind does not lie in that figure, but in the spirit of complete quiet and unpretentious dedication to her craft. Today, few still remember Aunt Gamma, but whenever the old film is replayed, some viewers still pause for a few seconds before that face, the face of a woman who exuded warmth without needing to stand out. Sheila Allen, in her own unique way, is proof that sometimes not everyone needs to be in the spotlight. Some people are born to make that light gentler. Mark Goddard, Major Don West, the hero left behind in the void. Born on July 24, 1936 in Lowell, Massachusetts, Mark Goddard grew up with a passion for sports and cinema. After graduating, he moved to New York to pursue acting, quickly gaining attention for his handsome appearance, bright eyes, and decisive demeanor. When he took on the role of Don West at the age of 29, Mark became a beloved face on television, the real hero admired by young audiences. Behind the scenes, he was close with his co-stars, especially Bill Mumy, who played Will Robinson, a relationship almost like father and son that lasted for decades. Major Don West was an icon of courage, a fearless pilot always ready to protect the crew from danger in cold space. On screen, he was youthful, strong, and spirited, the ideal model of the American youth in the 1960s. In real life, the man who brought that image to life, Mark Goddard, was also brilliant like a rising star. But every flight must land, and for Mark, the landing was not smooth. But then, the glamour of Lost in Space faded. Hollywood changed its tastes, and Mark was stuck with the image of the handsome pilot. New roles became scarce, money ran out, and his marriage dissolved. He once said bitterly, "People remember Don West, but no one remembers Mark Goddard." That reality led him to leave the film set for a time, seeking teaching as a different way of life. He taught drama to students, instilling in them the belief that art is not about fame, but the ability to live authentically. When old age arrived, Mark accepted the past with rare composure. He often attended reunions with his Lost in Space co-stars, laughing heartily, signing autographs for fans and sharing funny stories about the Robinson crew. Despite his health gradually declining, he kept his radiant smile. The smile that made so many people love Don West. On October 10, 2023, Mark Goddard passed away in Hingham, Massachusetts, aged 87. He departed quietly, without ostentation, just as he lived in his final years. His net worth was estimated at around $3 million, humble for a television star, but enough to speak of the persistence and self-respect of an artist who tasted both glory and oblivion. Today, when rewatching Lost in Space, the image of Major Don West still appears in the void, his eyes looking forward without regret, without looking back. Perhaps on some deep level, Mark Goddard also found peace, in the void of memory where the hero finally flies. Bob May, the robot in the metal shell. The anonymous man amidst the steel echo. Perhaps not many people know that behind the sparkling silver armor and the clumsy robotic arms of the robot in Lost in Space, there was a flesh-and-blood human Bob May. He was not a star who was interviewed or appeared on the red carpet. Yet without him, that robot would have been just an empty shell. Dick Tufeld's voice gave the character a soul, but Bob May was the heart that made the machine live. Every movement, every rotation, every shake of the head was the sweat and breath of an actor hidden inside. Born on September 4, 1939 in New York City, Bob grew up in a family with an artistic tradition. From childhood, he loved the stage, loved to perform. Before Lost in Space, Bob was a stuntman magician and occasionally a circus performer. The opportunity came to him in the mid-1960s, an invitation to play the robot. Many laughed, thinking it was a role no one wanted, but Bob accepted immediately without hesitation. He once recounted, "I knew no one would see my face, but that didn't mean I couldn't convey emotion." And he succeeded. Inside the suit, which weighed over 40 kilograms and had almost no air, Bob had to act to the pre-recorded voice, anticipating the rhythm of every line and rotating at the exact moment. Each scene was only a few minutes long, but he had to stand for hours in the suffocatingly hot armor. Once the cooling system malfunctioned, and he fainted on the set. When he woke up, the first thing he asked was, "Is the robot okay?" A half-joke, half-serious remark that fully demonstrated his professional spirit. In the years following Lost in Space, Bob continued to work on small film crews, but never had a role more prominent. He did not complain, only gently stated, "Not everyone is born to be seen." Hidden behind the metal, Bob perhaps understood better than anyone the cost of being remembered without being recognized. On January 18, 2009, Bob May passed away in Lancaster, California, aged 69. His ashes were interred in a local cemetery with a simple plaque inscribed, "He brought the robot to life." His net worth was estimated to be a modest $500,000, mostly from convention appearances and robot image rights. But the true wealth he left behind is the emotion he conveyed. When every child who watched Lost in Space once laughed, cheered, or cried for a machine capable of love. In the world of brilliant stars, Bob May chose the role of the one hidden in the shadows, and that is precisely what makes him immortal. Ultimately, amidst the sound of emotionless metal, the heart of a real human still echoes, the one who gave the robot a soul. Marta Kristen, Judy Robinson, lonely beauty amidst the galaxy. Born Birgit Annalisa Rusanen on February 26, 1945, in Oslo, Norway. Marta Kristen had a beginning to life straight out of a melancholic novel. She was the daughter of a German soldier and a Finnish woman during the chaotic period at the end of World War II. Her mother passed away shortly after giving birth, leaving the newborn in a cold orphanage in Norway. When she was just 4 years old, Marta was adopted by an American couple brought to the United States, given a new home, a new language, and a new name. But despite being loved, Marta always felt an unfillable void, the void of origin of memories she could not recall yet, could not forget either. That childhood carved a deep loneliness into her soul. Perhaps this is why when she played Judy Robinson in Lost in Space, 1965 at the age of 20, Marta portrayed the character with rare, genuine emotion. Judy, the eldest daughter of the Robinson family, was both the ideal model of intelligence and responsibility, and the one enduring isolation in distant space where there was no home, no friends, only drifting amongst the stars. Marta once said that she understood Judy immediately because both of them had been lost between different worlds. In Judy's eyes, one sees strength, but also the shadow of a girl searching for herself, as if the role was Marta's self-confession about her lost childhood. The success of Lost in Space spread Marta Kristen's name across the U.S. She became a teenage idol, appeared on magazine covers, and received countless letters from fans. But that spotlight quickly became stifling. Hollywood, with its strict stereotypes, had no place for a Norwegian girl with an angelic face, who wanted to prove she could do more than one role. Directors only saw Judy Robinson, not Marta Kristen. When acting offers gradually dwindled, Marta began to doubt her own abilities. Added to this were private hurts. She went through a failed marriage, lost loved ones, and struggled for many years with a feeling of solitude. In the few interviews she gave later, Marta spoke softly. "I used to live as if I were always out of frame." But instead of giving up, she chose to step out of the fame cycle, turning to painting, music, and community activities. She taught children with disabilities, helped the homeless, and lived peacefully by the California coast, where the storms of life seemed a little lighter. At the age of 80, Marta Kristen remains healthy, still possessing the gentle blue eyes that once captivated millions. Although no longer a star in the Hollywood sky, she is revered by the Lost in Space fan community as an icon of television's golden age. Her net worth is estimated at around $1.5 million US. Not huge, but enough to reflect a life of persistence, self-reliance, dependent on no one but herself. Today, whenever the old episodes are re-aired, the image of Judy Robinson still moves the audience. Amidst the infinite void of space, that girl still shines, just like Marta Kristen, who learned to turn loneliness into beauty. Tragedy did not extinguish her, but became a smoldering lamp, guiding her path, so that from a child abandoned in an orphanage, Marta Kristen became an icon, not of fame, but of steadfastness and the light of compassion. Angela Cartwright as Penny Robinson, childhood trapped in glory. Born Angela Margaret Cartwright on September 9, 1952, in Altrincham, England, she was brought to the U.S. by her family when she was just 3 years old. From a very early age, Angela was a child of the camera, appearing in commercials, then becoming a famous child actor in Hollywood. In 1965, when she was only 13, she was cast as Penny Robinson, the second daughter of the Robinson family in Lost in Space. Penny was active, intelligent, and full of imagination, a perfect reflection of Angela in real life. With her bright eyes and innocent smile, she became an icon of childhood on screen, bringing natural innocence to the cold space of the cosmos. However, few knew that behind that smile was a burden the little girl had to carry. Fame came too soon, preventing Angela from having a normal childhood. While her friends went to school, she spent most of her time on the set living among adults, listening to conversations not meant for children. She once said in an interview, "I grew up under the lights, and that meant I never really knew what true darkness was." When Lost in Space ended, Angela was only 16, but her soul was weary like an adult's. Then came the long, uncertain years. Hollywood did not know what to do with a child star who had grown up. Roles gradually disappeared, and Angela, once loved by all of America, suddenly became invisible. That change led her into a crisis, feeling confused about her own identity. A familiar tragedy for many child actors. She went through periods of depression, feeling abandoned by the world that had previously celebrated her. But instead of collapsing, Angela chose a different path, stepping away from the screen to reclaim her soul. She turned to photography, then painting. With a camera in her hand, Angela seemed to rediscover her true voice. She began capturing simple moments, genuine smiles, and the small things she never had time to see when she was a star. Her life became simple but meaningful. She married, had 2 children, and maintained close ties with her Lost in Space co-stars, especially Marta, Kristen, and Bill Mumy. They were like a real family where Angela could be the youngest sibling forever for the first time, not just a role. Currently at the age of 73, Angela is still healthy, still attending conventions, signing autographs, and interacting with fans. She often tells younger fans, "Fame is not the goal. The important thing is to keep your true self." Her net worth is estimated at around $5 million, primarily from her art and photography work. But Angela Cartwright's true value does not lie in that number, but in the fact that she overcame the tragedy of a stolen childhood to live a life of freedom where the light no longer blinds, but is just enough to illuminate herself. Amidst the galaxy of Lost in Space memories, Penny Robinson will always be the innocent girl audiences love. And Angela Cartwright, who was once lost in the glory, found the home of her soul where there are no cameras, only a genuine smile. Bill Mumy, as Will Robinson, the child genius and the shadow of memory. Born Charles William Mumy Jr. on February 1, 1954 in San Gabriel, California, USA. When Lost in Space began airing in 1965, Bill was only 11 years old, but already a prodigy in Hollywood. In the role of Will Robinson, the active, intelligent, and courageous youngest son of the Robinson family, Bill not only captured the hearts of young audiences, but also made adults smile whenever they heard the boy's clear laughter in the vast cosmos. Will was an icon of hope and intelligence in a lost world, a role Bill seemed born to play. But that very perfection became his life's tragedy. When a child is loved by all of America, the pressure mounts accordingly. Bill grew up on set learning to appear happy, even when tired, learning to please directors and cameras, rather than listening to his true feelings. After Lost in Space, he became a former child star at just 15, a label that was both glorious and painful. Many once called him the small genius of television, but Hollywood did not know what to do with a genius who had grown up. In the 1970s, Bill Mumy entered a period of instability. Serious roles came infrequently, fame declined, and he began to feel lost in the world that once celebrated him. He once admitted, "The hardest thing is not being famous, but learning how to live when people stop recognizing you." Unwilling to be consumed by the past, Bill found an outlet in music, a secret passion since childhood. He became a musician, composing, performing with small bands, and even releasing his own albums. Music was his refuge, a place where Will Robinson's voice merged with the guitar, no longer bound by the image of the child genius. Overcoming those years of crisis, Bill Mumy gradually re-emerged as a versatile artist. He writes books, does voiceover work, and acts in television and animated series. Although he never returned to his former peak, Bill found peace in creating for joy rather than fame. He remains involved with the Lost in Space fan community, appearing at anniversaries and signing conventions, always friendly and humble. Now at the age of 71, Bill Mumy lives with his wife and children in California, still playing music, writing science fiction, and enjoying a peaceful life. His net worth is estimated at around 10 million US dollars, mostly from music, film, and book royalties. Nevertheless, what earns him respect is not the money, but the courage to maintain himself amidst a tempting Hollywood. For fans, Will Robinson remains an icon of intelligence and courage, while Bill Mumy, the boy the whole world loved, is proof that sometimes growing up does not mean leaving the past, but learning to live in harmony with it. It has been nearly 6 decades since Lost in Space first took off on the small screen in 1965, yet the image of the Robinson family lives on in the memories of millions of viewers. That generation of actors brought joy, laughter, and dreams of a brilliant future beyond space. However, behind that seemingly immortal glamour are silent tragedies, personal struggles that few have ever seen. Lost in Space is not just a science fiction series, but a mirror reflecting the fate of artists who committed their entire hearts to the audience's cosmos. These real-life stories, whether tragic or quiet, remind us that behind every smile on screen are real people with fears, losses, and abandoned dreams. They smiled for us to smile, they cried in silence for us to see a more beautiful universe. And perhaps that is the noblest tragedy, when the artist must sacrifice a part of their life to create an immortal moment for others. Now, when you mention Lost in Space, remember not just the glittering images on the screen, but also the hearts behind the camera. The people who quietly endured, loved, and lived fully for their art. And what about you? Which character in Lost in Space left the deepest impression on you? Share your feelings in the comments section, and don't forget to like and subscribe so we can continue exploring the emotional behind-the-scenes stories where light and shadow coexist, just like the very nature of humanity.